Millions of pager messages and more are lost in space by a satellite failure in orbit. Indonesian protesters and the U.S. government step up pressure on Indonesia's president to resign. We'll show you how police in more and more states are catching red light runners with a camera. And Eye on America investigates a serious computer hack attack on the Pentagon during the most recent showdown with Saddam.
This is the CBS Evening News. With Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. Millions of Americans got a nasty wake-up call today when their beepers didn't go off. A communications satellite that lost track of Earth 24 hours ago was a sharp reminder how much we now rely on high-tech systems that are not fail-safe. The effects were felt business to business, person to person, doctor to patient, and beyond. CBS's Diana Olick begins our coverage of the satellite with a bad attitude and the deep impact here on Earth.
If you didn't hear this sound today,
I can't get nobody to call me back.
You're not alone. Nearly 45 million pagers went on the blink late yesterday afternoon. The culprit is a satellite called Galaxy 4, which was launched 5 years ago like this one. The $250 million communications device now orbiting the Earth is supposed to relay messages, but seems to have mysteriously lost its sense of direction. Its owner, Pan Amsat, says it doesn't know why, but reported trouble just last week to the government. Now it claims last night's meltdown was unrelated. So from surgeons...
Professionals like us, we rely a lot on the system, so it's scary.
To starlets.
I'm an actress and I have auditions I need to go on.
Americans lost touch.
This is a Category 10 disaster.
Galaxy 719 is where the network is.
And the technological trouble goes beyond the pocket pager. News organizations like CBS, which send thousands of pictures an hour through Galaxy 4, went to hash and scrambled to find new satellites. For businesses, it was a one-day disaster. Fast pay at LA pumps, which get credit approval through space, ground to a halt. Right now, there are more than 200 communications satellites spinning overhead. They're used to transmit everything from primetime TV to financial data to the number of toothbrushes your local Kmart needs to stock. And that's just in the 20th century.
Once we get more and more satellites working, we're depending on for more and more services, this is going to happen, this is going to be a problem, and we need to know how to deal with it. The satellite companies need to be prepared.
Pan Amsat says it'll have all services transferred to new satellites in a week, but wait until November. That's when a massive meteor shower may storm the atmosphere, where all those satellites are spinning around. Diana Olick, CBS News, New York.
Joining us now from Florida's Kennedy Space Center, our veteran CBS News space consultant, Bill Harwood. Bill, why would a communications satellite like this one fail? What could cause it?
That's a $180 million question, Dan. The engineers aren't saying a lot right now. They're looking at all the data trying to figure that out. But there were hints from the company last week that there was trouble with Galaxy 4, and it's probably a hardware failure of some sort. Either way, if this satellite is in fact a total write-off, and that's what officials are privately saying right now, the underwriting community is looking at about a $180 million payout.
Well, when something like this happens, how do you fix a broken satellite up there?
Well, you know, these satellites orbit 22,300 miles above the equator, and that's far beyond the reach of any spacewalking repairman to go up and do a service call. What they do is they design these satellites with as many backup systems and as much redundancy on board as possible so that they can withstand the failure of a major component and still perform their function. But when the secondary systems also fail, which appears to be the case with Galaxy 4, then there's not a lot they can do but eat the loss, move their customers to other satellites, and think about relaunching a spare satellite.
Bill Harwood, thanks. And later in this broadcast, Eye on America investigates a high-tech threat to U.S. national security you didn't hear about, but the president did. They kept it secret. Well, she didn't come right out and say it, but U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright hinted strongly today that Indonesia's President Suharto should resign. Suharto, however, is showing no signs he'll go quietly anytime soon. CBS's Barry Peterson in Jakarta reports Suharto flexed more military muscle today after a week of often violent anti-government economic-based protests.
Jakarta woke up this morning an occupied city, occupied by its own army, here to block a rally against President Suharto. It worked. The military got what it wanted. Today, the city of 11 million was a ghost town.
This was
Suharto's day with a little help from his friends. Clearly, he intends to get the streets of Indonesia back under control using fear or force. The fear, according to this opposition leader, came in a late-night phone call from a general saying the march could end in a massacre, like that scene at Tiananmen Square. The Army wants no repeat of last week's riots, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars in damage and took more than 500 lives. Only the students were on the move, moving on tops of buses or hoods of cars, flocking to Parliament for another day of protest. For the moment, the Army is not interfering. A few soldiers even applauded anti-Suharto chants. That good mood may not last. Opposition leaders tonight vowed they will try again to march through Jakarta, even if it means bloodshed. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Jakarta.
More now on the Clinton administration's view of this big international story. Keep in mind the White House and the State Department are doing diplomatic nudging. CBS News White House correspondent Scott Pelley joins us now with that. Scott?
Dan, the administration made it clear today that it wants Suharto to make good swiftly on his promise to give up power. The Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, today publicly asked Suharto to move Indonesia toward democratic transition. The strategy here at the White House is to push Suharto along without backing him into a corner.
The administration is not hinting at anything at all. We are saying in a very direct way that there is a historic moment here where President Suharto could demonstrate his statesmanship by undertaking exactly the transition to democracy that he has pledged himself to undertake. And that should be meaningful, and it should be real, and it should be conducted in dialogue with the people of Indonesia.
The White House worries about Indonesia because it is the world's fourth most populous country, and the chaos there only deepens the Asian financial crisis. A senior advisor to the president tells us this evening that the administration would be content to see Suharto stay for a few months as long as that time was used to organize credible elections. Dan?
Scott Pelley at the White House. There is new evidence tonight that ripples from Asia's financial troubles are spreading to this side of the Pacific. CBS's Anthony Mason reports on America's bulging trade deficit. New figures out today show it rose 7% in March to a record $13 billion. Anthony?
Dan, about half of the increase in the trade deficit is due directly to the troubles in Asia. If you can't see the impact yet on U.S. stocks, you can on America's docks. In Long Beach, California, the largest port in the country, containers from Asia are arriving full of cheap goods. Imports are up 18% here, and more containers are going back to Asia empty. There's no money to buy American products. Until this year, Asia accounted for about a third of American exports and was the fastest growing market. That will change. The good news, as Asia unloads its cheaper goods on the booming U.S. economy, the competition will keep prices down.
That keeps inflation pressures down. It keeps the pressure off the Fed to raise interest rates. So in the short run, it's probably a good thing. In the longer run, though, it's poison.
Poison, says Fred Berkston of the Institute for International Economics, because American companies could see their profits sink.
It could be the one imbalance in our whole economy that actually brings the expansion to a sharp slowdown, if not an actual halt.
That's the worst-case scenario, but one economists are watching. For now, the American economy remains so robust, even an invasion of Asian goods hasn't rattled it. Dan?
Anthony Mason, thanks. Still ahead on the CBS Evening News, catching red light runners with cameras on light poles. Chelsea Clinton spends a night in the hospital. We'll show you the new $20 bill unveiled today, and it's the hottest ticket in town tonight. People are hoping for a one-way ticket to Easy Street. So you step on it and keep going. Well, a study out today shows red light runners cause more than 250,000 accidents a year in this country, many of them fatal. But as we hear from CBS's Cheryl Atkinson, police now say they've found a way to make at least some drivers stop.
Just watch how many cars barrel on through after the light turns red. We spent an hour today at this intersection in Arlington, Virginia, and saw more than a dozen cars take the red. Today's study shows an alarming increase in fatal crashes caused by red light runners. Each year, more than 700 people die, a 20% increase over 5 years.
The primary reason is that drivers realize they can run red lights and get away with it. We're simply not doing enough to crack down on the red light running problem.
But some cities just may have found an answer, posting cameras at dangerous intersections like this one in Alexandria, Virginia, ready to snap photos of red light runners.
You know, this camera just took your picture going through that red light. This camera back there over the intersection.
Tickets are mailed after police review the photos, and the pictures are speaking 1,000 words. Police claim some amazing results. Listen to what's happened in Oxnard, California, after 1 year